Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I am talking about luxury beauty that you need to know about. So these are beauty products in my collection that I absolutely love, and they're kind of hidden gems because a lot of people don't talk about them. It's either that maybe people haven't discovered them or they just haven't gotten enough attention on YouTube, but they're products that I just feel like need to be spoken more about. There's actually a few new products that I've tried out that are becoming new favorites, so I wanted to throw them in this video as well. So we kind of have a mix of new makeup and old makeup favorites, and they're just products that I feel like you should know about and that need to be talked about more. They're just those lovely hidden gems. So again, let me know down below your favorite hidden gem products that you wish other people knew about or you wish other people talked about. I always love to hear from you guys. But if you want to hear all about the luxury beauty products that you need to know about, those hidden gems, then just keep watching. Let's get started on luxury makeup that you need to know about. So this is my Surratt beauty palette. I love Surratt eyeshadows. I feel like they are extremely underrated and that you really need to try them out because the formula is so unique. So I have curated this palette myself. I did buy these 3 shades here and then they sent me this one. These 2 shades are actually the exact same shade. So this is the shade Truff. And then right here, this is the shade Griege, and here is the shade Cuivre, and I just love this for a neutral palette. Obviously, I would probably replace this shade with like a cream shade, but I didn't have anything, so I just put this identical shade here. But these eyeshadows are just extremely unique in the beauty space in general. So I'm going to start off with the shade Griege, taking it on a Sonia G Blender Pro. I love these eyeshadows because they have this technology to it, which is really unique. They remind me of the Tom Ford Creme eyeshadows in that they are basically a powder to cream eyeshadow. So they apply like a powder would, but they meld into the skin and they melt into the skin like a cream product. So if you're someone with dry eyes or if you're someone that just doesn't like powdery eyeshadows and you kind of like those skin-like products or those products that just become one, they really just enhance your natural beauty because they're not those really intense powdery eyeshadows. They do offer a good amount of pigmentation, but they're not overly pigmented where they're hard to blend. You get a really great ease of application. I feel like they are very foolproof products. A beginner could use these, but anyone who's really advanced in makeup could use these because they are just so blendable and so creamy on the eyes. Just the way they diffuse is so absolutely gorgeous, and I'm just so impressed with my look every time that I apply these shadows. So I'm just applying this to the outer corner first where I want that most pigment, and then I am kind of blending it all over the eye and then also blending it into the crease with any excess pigment that's just left over for a more, I guess, kind of a more blown out look. And then with these shades, you can always go in with a little bit more and intensify. I'm actually going to dip into the Cuivre shade, which does have a little bit more of a sheen to it. There are like some shimmer particles, but it's not a chunky glitter at all. It does look more matte on the eyes. So I'm just pressing that into the outer corner a little bit. But yeah, if you haven't experienced these eyeshadows, I really, really recommend them. And I actually do have a discount code with Surratt now. So the code is just Lisa15 and you can get 15% off. Seriously, try out these eyeshadows if you haven't. They are just absolutely gorgeous. And Surratt does focus on more like sustainable packaging. So when you buy the eyeshadows, they do come in, I'm going to say it's not very luxurious packaging. They come kind of in individuals, but you can purchase the palette separately so that you can create your own palette. They also have the Beyond Beige palette, which is a really beautiful pre-made palette if you like something that's already put together for you. But just highly, highly recommend these eyeshadows. They're gorgeous. Actually, before I dip into a shimmer, I'm going to take the Truff shade, which is the matte deep shade, and I'm just going to take it on this little smudge brush that I have. I'm just going to press that into the upper lash line, staying very, very close to the lash line. I'm just going to take it about 3/4 across the eye. I'm not going to bring it all the way to the inner corner. And another luxury beauty product that I just feel like is so underrated that you really need to try if you haven't tried these out. These are the Bobbi Brown Luxe Eyeshadow Rich Metals. This is the shade Melting Point. So these are very, very similar to the Shantakai Luminescent eye shades. They are a little less expensive though, which I really enjoy. And I would say these kind of melt onto the eyes a little bit more than the Chantecaille ones. While the Chantecaille ones I still think are very, very beautiful and I love to have them in my collection. They are a little bit more sparkly, so they just have a little bit more of an intermittent shimmer to them. Where these ones, they do still have a little bit of that intermittent shimmer, but it's just not as sporadic as the Chantecaille Luminescent eye shades. This really does have that property where, again, it melts into the eyes, especially like after about an hour, you'll really notice that creamy quality to these eyeshadows. They are a baked gelée product, so those baked gelées do tend to really just melt into the eyes. These Surratt eyeshadows play really beautifully with these sort of baked eyeshadows too. I'm just going to take that blending brush and blend over the edges. And I'm just going to run a little bit of this melting point eyeshadow just underneath the lower lash line a little bit. So just add a little bit of that sheen under there. When it comes to face primers, something that I really don't hear a lot of people talk about that is something that I really, really enjoy in my collection is the Chantecaille Sheer Glow Rose Face Tint. This is something I really love as a primer. You can see like how much, well, can you see how much I've gone through that? I've gone through it a lot. This is something that adds a very beautiful but subtle glow. It's extremely, extremely subtle, and it is something that I recommend only using underneath makeup. This does not perform very well on top of makeup as like, say, a highlighter, like a liquid highlighter, but it's very beautiful underneath makeup. I like to use it underneath my eyes primarily, just because it adds like a very, very subtle color correction aspect to it. It does have a very subtle rose tint, and there is a little bit of glow, so it does reflect the light a little bit, which I think makes it work really well underneath makeup because the light is reflecting a bit more, you don't necessarily need as much concealer. So this kind of product just really helps me to not go in with as much concealer over top. So I absolutely love this product and just feel like it's one of those hidden gems. I feel like a lot of the foundations that I really, really enjoy are luxury makeup products that you need to know about, because a lot of my foundations I feel like are underrated, the ones that I love the most. If I could just mention like the Cle de Peau Radiant Cushion Foundation Dewy. I feel like no one really talks about this, but it is absolutely such a beautiful, gorgeous foundation. Kind of my #1 foundation currently. I just love how it always looks on the skin. It is more of a medium coverage foundation, so I just really, really enjoy this. I feel like you can get a lot more versatility over a foundation that's more of that medium coverage that's buildable, because you can make it a very light coverage, but you can also build it up, versus if you just buy a light coverage foundation, you're kind of just stuck with one light coverage foundation. But you can use this in a variety of different ways and get that very buildable coverage. It's just gorgeous, blurring, long wearing, lovely. But something that I just feel like is even more underrated that no one talks about is this Dior Capture Totale Super Potent Serum Foundation in the shade 3N. That's my shade. I absolutely love this foundation. It does have a really interesting texture. It is very similar to like a serum, but it is a little bit thicker. So it's not as liquidy as maybe you would think it would be. And I'm just gonna take that on a Sonia G. This is a classic base, and I like to pump that product out onto the palm of my hand, just so the back of my hand doesn't absorb all that product, because there are pores on the back of your hand, and the pores will absorb most of your foundation if you apply it there first. I really love this foundation because it has a beautiful, I'd say it's like a light, buildable to medium coverage. So you are going to only be able to get a maximum medium coverage build with this sort of foundation. But just the way it looks on the skin it's so seamless and beautiful. It looks like your skin, but better. And it gives you a lovely, lovely finish because it isn't super, I like to call it like my Goldilocks foundation. It's not too matte, but it's not too dewy. It's that perfect in between. It gives a very natural finish to the skin. Very, very skin-like. A lot of times with dewy foundations, they're not very skin-like because they just look too radiant to be skin-like. But this foundation is extremely skin-like. It gives me the perfect amount of coverage. It is very blurring on the skin. It does perfect. If you have any texture on your skin, this is a great foundation for you because it just does have this blurring filtered technology. It's beautiful. So I just love everything about it. It's very long wearing as well. and I don't really hear anyone talk about it, but I know that the colors aren't great for that Dior foundation. They are missing some shades, but definitely a second pick would be this Cle de Peau Radiant Cushion Foundation Dewy. They're both absolutely beautiful. I would say if you want more coverage, go for the Cle de Peau. They're both great for every day though. I'm really happy with both of those products, and they're both the type of products that once I run through them, I will absolutely repurchase. I've already repurchased this Dior foundation. I believe this is my third bottle. It might be my fourth. I actually went to pick up another bottle just because I like having backups just in case, but it's completely sold out everywhere in Canada. So hopefully they'll have that back in stock soon, but it's absolutely beautiful. I just realized that I forgot to talk about in my mascara section. So I did go ahead and apply mascara, if you didn't notice, before I moved on to the face. I used the YSL Lash Clash in brown. I don't think this is necessarily underrated, but if you haven't heard about this YSL Lash Clash, I definitely think it is a must-have. I love the shade brown. I feel like I really like the formula. I do still prefer the Gucci formula over this one because it does have the tendency to smudge a little bit. It doesn't flake, but it does smudge after like many hours. But besides that, I absolutely love the color. But the underrated product I really want to mention is this Dior. This is the Dior Maximizer 3D Lash Primer Serum. If you have not tried a lash primer underneath your mascara and you're someone that doesn't wear false lashes, please try out this lash primer. It makes all the difference to go in with a lash primer. This is a necessity for me. I am currently using the Chanel one just because I had that on hand, but this is my holy grail, the Dior one. For some reason, it's just like slightly better than the Chanel one, but this conditions your lashes, it adds length and volume, and honestly, it makes your mascara perform even better. So this is something that I feel like is a must-have. But I'm going to move on to concealer. And for concealer, I actually have been testing this product out. I think this is my 5th day trying it, and it's something I am really enjoying. I'm going to explain why, and it's something that I feel like is going to be a hidden gem because a lot of people just don't talk about Surratt Beauty, and it is just one of my favorite brands. This actually was sent to me from the brand. I do want to disclaim that because I think it is important that you know when I am sent items versus when I purchase them myself. I would have purchased this myself even if I wasn't sent it, but I was sent the shade 3 and 4. I gave the shade 3 to my mom, so she is going to let me know how that performs on her mature eyes, which I'm really looking forward to hearing her thoughts on it, just because I know that a lot of you asked for my mom's opinions on the products. But the shade 4, I will say these run light, so whatever the description is, it sounds like it will be darker than what it is, so I would just purchase a shade deeper than you think. Shade 4 is a little bit too bright for me still. I probably would do better with the shade 5 or 6. So when I go through this, I will purchase a deeper shade because this is a product I will repurchase. Another thing that I don't really love about this is that it is in this wand. Just not my favorite. I would prefer something like the Givenchy that has this wand that just comes out like that because it's just a little bit more precise. I find it a little bit hard to be precise with concealer with something like this, but you can take a brush, which is what I'm going to do. So I really love this concealer. I am going to try and explain some differences between my favorite products. So when I am comparing this to, say, the Chanel Sublimage concealer, the Chanel Sublimage concealer has a little bit less coverage than this one. It also has, the Chanel has a little bit of a radiance to it, so it reflects the light. I don't think this one is as radiant as the Chanel one. And because dark circles are probably my main concern with my skin, I really like this Surratt one because it just gives me a little bit more coverage. And I'm really impressed with how this lasts on the under eyes. So it doesn't crease, it doesn't settle into creases, it doesn't fade throughout the day. It just remains intact and beautiful all day long, especially for how long I've been testing it. I am very impressed. So I am going in with that amount of product. Again, you can be a little bit more precise if you just wanted to take it on a brush the whole time, but whatever. I don't mind applying it with this little sponge tip underneath my eyes directly. I just make sure not to bring it up right underneath the lash line because when you have too much product in that area, it can look a little bit heavy, especially in person because you can really see those lines, and when makeup's sitting in those lines, it just doesn't look as flattering. So I'm going to take a damp Beauty Blender sponge and just press it onto the under eyes. So this does give me a little bit more brightness because it's a little bit of a brighter concealer than I normally wear. But sometimes I find when I use a concealer that's too brightening, it almost makes my under eye circles look worse because sometimes it just can enhance that darkness. But this product has enough coverage that it doesn't do that. It just really brightens my under eyes, but it gives me that coverage that I need, and it just looks so beautiful. This formula is absolutely gorgeous, and even though it does have a little bit more coverage than, say, like the Chanel concealer, it does still look skin-like. Like, it doesn't look heavy on the under eyes at all. It really is similar to the Dewdrop foundation in that aspect, where it is quite skin-like. I would say the Dewdrop foundation does have a little bit more of that light reflection. Did I even say what this is called? This is called the Surratt Dewdrop Concealer in the shade 4. I think I forgot to even mention that because I was just so excited to talk about it. But it is just such a beautiful skin-like formula that I just think it looks gorgeous. But again, there's not too much of that light reflection. There's no shimmer particles. It just looks very beautiful on the under eye region. If you're dry skin, if you have dry skin, I think this will work really well for you because I also have dry skin. If you have oilier skin, I still think this will work for you because it does have enough dryness to it without it being dry. It just has a beautiful dry down because it is not too emollient. I would say in comparison to the Givenchy, you guys have heard me, this is kind of like my new favorite. The Givenchy has a lighter coverage and it's more of that fluid consistency. The Surratt concealer is a little bit thicker, but still very easy to blend onto the under eyes. But it is really beautiful. I'm very impressed with this formula. I'm really happy, especially because I don't need to use a color corrector underneath this concealer. If I'm comparing it, I know people ask about the Sisley concealer in comparison to this. The Sisley concealer definitely has more of that color correction aspect to it, and it's even thicker than the Surratt concealer. So with the Sisley one, it does have the tendency to look, I don't want to say it looks heavy, but if you apply too much of that concealer, it can look just a little bit more makeup-y, only because it does have such a full coverage. The Surratt concealer has more of that medium buildable to a fuller coverage, where the Sisley concealer is just a straight up full coverage. So if I'm rating in terms of coverage, it would go probably the Givenchy is the lightest, then the Chanel, then this Surratt, and then the Sisley concealer in terms of coverage from lightest to most full coverage. But I think this is absolutely beautiful if you're looking for a new concealer that offers more coverage than the Chanel or the Givenchy. This is absolutely fantastic, no complaints, I love it. Now, cream blushes are having a moment right now, and I've tried so many formulas. A lot of formulas, if you guys don't know, I have extremely sensitive skin. A lot of formulas do end up making me break out after a while, but I have checked on this formula and it doesn't have any pore clogging ingredients, and it's something that I can use day after day without it making me break out or anything like that. So if you're someone with sensitive skin, I really recommend this Persona Blush Multi-Stick. So I have this ingredient checker. It's like this acne ingredient checker. You can list all the ingredients of a product. It will check and see if it's non-comedogenic. This product makes the cut. There's nothing comedogenic in this product that will make you break out. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful formula that I feel like is very underrated. This is the Persona Blush Multi-Stick, specifically in the shade Bloom. I also have the shade Bubble, which is like a very bubblegum pink, baby pink shade. But this shade is absolutely just phenomenal on the skin. So I will show it to you. I'm gonna take this product on a Sonia G mini base. And I just like to pick up some of that product, and then I will just make sure it's evenly distributed on the brush by using the palm of my hand. And then I just like to stipple it into the skin. And I really enjoy this formulation because it's not too dewy, but it's not too matte, and it's a really beautiful pigment. A lot of cream blushes that have been released are just super intensely pigmented, and they're really hard to work with, especially if you're someone who's a beginner or maybe you have drier skin. They can just tend to dry down on your skin almost instantly. But this offers you enough pigment where you're going to see it on the cheeks. It's not like an invisible product, but it's not too much pigment where it's going to just get away from you and it's going to be hard to blend and I don't know, sometimes the edges of cream blushes, they kind of escape from you, and it just makes it a little bit hard to blend when products are ultra pigmented. So I like that this is more buildable. It's not sheer, but it does have like a medium amount of pigment. And I just think this color is beautiful. It is like the perfect peachy pink shade, but it's not super obnoxious. It's not super bright. It just gives your color, your cheeks, that hint of color that's so youthful. And it's so juicy and fresh, but it's not juicy in that it's super dewy on the skin. I feel like this is a very skin-like blush because the formula is just very beautiful on this, where it's kind of that perfect formula where it's not too dewy, but it's also not extremely matte and drying on the skin. It's absolutely fantastic. And I just feel like I don't hear a lot of people talk about these Persona blush multi-sticks, but absolutely pick up the shade Bloom if you haven't already. I do like to sometimes just go over the edges with a sponge. I do think this shade is limited edition also, so I would get it while you can. A hidden gem luxury beauty powder that you need to know about is this Rodial Glass Powder Loose Setting Powder. So this is just a loose setting powder. I feel like this is very underrated. I don't really hear anyone talk about it. It is technically like a translucent powder, but it's not a white translucent powder, so I feel like this would work really well for all different skin tones. A lot of time translucent powders won't work for like the deepest skin tone because they will show up ashy on the skin. But this does have a little bit of color to it, so it works really well. It is a very finely milled powder. I'm going to just tap out the creases on my under eyes. And then I like to go in with a little bit, take off that excess powder, and then press it onto the under eyes. So I typically don't use this all over the face. You could use it all over the face. I just prefer another powder for my face. But this is really beautiful on the under eyes because it does not look powdery on the under eyes. It just sets your makeup down beautifully. It's called the glass powder. There isn't a shimmer to this powder. It does look like, I want to say, more matte on my under eyes. It's not a flat matte though. It still is very skin-like, but it does set down your concealer so that you don't have any of that reflection, and your concealer just honestly looks and lasts better with this sort of powder. And it blurs the pores. It blurs any texture on your under eyes. It's just absolutely beautiful. If you're looking for a powder for your under eyes without it looking heavy, without it looking shimmery, this is the powder for you. I know a lot of people love the Givenchy powder, but I just don't like that there's like there's like a fine pearl through it and you can detect shimmer particles on your under eyes. So it's not my absolute favorite, but that's another option if you are someone that likes more luminosity. And I'm going to quickly just finish the under eyes. I'm going to take this Griege eyeshadow from Surratt and just pick it up on a pencil brush. And I am just going to blend that underneath the lower lash line. Going from the outer corner, I'm not going to bring it all the way to the inner corner, but about 3/4 of the way across. There's two lip products that I feel like are extremely underrated on this space. This is the Nars Afterglow Lip Balm Brilliance in the shade Fastlane. These are absolutely gorgeous. They are very similar to the Chanel Rouge Cocoa Flashes, but I feel like I even like this better. It is just phenomenal. I love how it feels on the lips. It has that perfect consistency where it's like that lipstick lip balm hybrid, more on the balm side, but it's not as waxy as a balm is. It offers light pigmentation. It just feels so comfortable and so thin on the lips. Absolutely beautiful formula. And I just love to throw it in my bag and touch up. I haven't really been into lip liner lately, so I've been skipping that a lot. And then a lip gloss. This is technically not luxury, but this is the Too Faced Hangover Pillow Balm Lip Treatment. This is just the clear shade. It does come in different shade options, which I maybe will try next. But literally no one talks about this, and it is so good. This is like my favorite lip balm of all time. It's just such a thin consistency, and it's so comfortable, and it is so hydrating. It never feels gloopy. It never gives you those little white lines on your lips that sometimes you can get after a few hours. It is just the most like cushiony, just velvety, lovely lip gloss formula. Velvety is the wrong word. It's just so plush and lovely for a lip balm. I do always like to just rub everything into my lips just so my lips look a little bit more lifted. But seriously, if you haven't tried out this formula, it's not that expensive and it is so worth the price tag because this is just like my holy grail lip balm, lip touch-up formula. It's perfect. The next luxury beauty product you need to know about is this Surratt bronzer. This is the Artistique bronzer in the shade Soleil Doux. So they did release 2 different shades. I do think they need to come out with more shades than just 2 because obviously there's way more skin tones, and I think this is the deeper bronzer. I could be wrong, but if this works for me, then, you know, we need some deeper shades. But I absolutely love this formula. Now, Surratt does send me some beauty products, but I purchased this myself, and it's just such a gorgeous formula. If you have ever tried their powder formulas, very similar to their eyeshadows, this is just such a finely milled, just creamy bronzer. So when you apply it, again, you get that ease of application of a powder, but it really does melt into the skin. It does offer more pigment, like say a baked gelée. I talk about those a lot, how they really melt into the skin. This is a different formula than a baked gelée. This is made in Japan, but it's just a very creamy powder bronzer that does melt onto your skin, and it does look like a cream bronzer, but it does offer more pigment than those baked gelée formulas. So I like to take it on a brush. You don't pick up that much. You can see, like with my application, I'm just pressing lightly into that bronzer. And as always, I do tap off the excess on the back of my hand. And then I just press it onto the skin. So you can see I'm not sweeping or buffing things into the skin. I'm just gently pressing it onto the skin to give my skin a little bit of color. I do like to run it a little bit over my nose because that's where we tend to be kissed by the sun as well. But it's absolutely a beautiful formula, and it is so easy to blend. It's so easy to apply. No harsh lines. It is honestly just phenomenal. These formulas that Surratt does, it's honestly such a luxurious experience. It's beautiful. But if you're looking for a formula that is easy to blend, easy to apply, this is fantastic. I would say this is the most similar to the Valentino bronzer because it does have that very unique quality where it's not a baked gelée, but it does apply like a powder, but it blends into the skin and melts into the skin like a cream does, which is very similar to the Valentino bronzer. I think the Valentino bronzer is warmer than this shade though, but the Valentino bronzer is always out of stock. So I like that I have this option. It is a superb formula. I do feel like I still need a little bit of color on my cheeks just because I don't think I applied enough of that cream blush. So I'm going to take the Valentino. This is the Eye to Cheek in the shade 2. I believe it's called Very Rose. I could be wrong. I'm taking it on a Sonia G Cheek Pro. And when I apply powder blush on top of a cream blush, I like to just literally press into that blush once, and then I will just tap off the excess. And then again, I like to be very gentle with my application and just lightly press it into the skin. You can always go in with more product, but it's very hard to take away product once you've applied it onto the skin. If you haven't tried these Valentino blushes, do yourself a favor, try them out. There's been a lot of blushes that have come out lately, but none of them top this Valentino blush. It's just such an exquisite formula. Very, again, similar. It's similar to the Valentino bronzer and the Surratt bronzer in that it's this powder formula that's very creamy and it applies like a powder, but it melts into the skin like a cream would. Just such a gorgeous formula. It does have this slight glow to it without it being shimmery, so it doesn't emphasize texture. It just blends onto the skin gorgeously. If you are just looking for a very slight glow that is incredibly skin-like, this is the Tom Ford Skin Illuminating Powder Duo in the shade 01 Moonlight. I feel like this is another hidden gem. It is quite pricey, so I recommend picking it up when there is a sale. Don't buy this at full price because this literally is always on sale at some point. But I like to just mix these 2 shades back and forth on a little blending brush. I don't wear this every day. I would say more for like special occasions, but it is just such a special makeup product and it just finishes off the look beautifully. So again, I like to be very gentle with my application, just applying it on the high points of my cheekbones and then a little bit above the brow here. So this formula is a baked gelée. So again, it's that powder to cream formula. It is a little bit harder to pick up because it is a baked gelée, but it's just a classic. It looks beautiful on everyone and it's so skin-like, so it's really not going to emphasize texture on your skin. It's going to make your skin just look it's going to make your skin look even more beautiful just because it's so finely milled and it's so subtle and soft that it doesn't look like a typical highlighter where it's like, whoa, it's really obvious that you're wearing highlighter. It's just a subtle touch, a subtle finishing touch to your makeup where the makeup just comes together and gives you that soft candlelit glow without it being obnoxious, without it being a noticeable highlighter. It's just perfection. The final luxury beauty product that you need to know about, I feel silly talking about this because I talk about it in every video, but this is so underrated. No one else talks about this. This is the Cle de Peau Refining Pressed Powder. Now, this is a translucent shade. I do hope Cle de Peau releases this in like a deeper translucent shade because I don't think that this will work on really deep skin tones because it is that kind of white powder. So that is the one downfall of this, is that they need more tones because translucent doesn't really work for absolutely everyone. Even though I don't think like you can't translate it on my skin tone, I do think if you had like a really deep skin tone, you might be able to see a little bit of this, even though, again, you can't see any color when I press it onto my skin. But this powder is just the absolute best because it sets your makeup. So again, taking off that excess, it sets your makeup without it being too matte on the skin. So it's a very skin-like powder, but my favorite thing about it is how blurring this is on your skin. Like, you look poreless when you apply this to your skin. So I'm someone, I don't like to apply powder all over the skin. I'm more of a specific, like I apply powder in specific areas. So to the front of my face, maybe the sides of my nose, the middle of my chin, the middle of my forehead, just where I don't want to be shiny. But this takes away the shine, but it looks incredibly skin-like and it will blur your pores. You have no pores left on your skin. You have no texture on your skin. This is the type of product this is. It is truly, it's called the Refining Pressed Powder, and it is refining on the skin. Like, your skin just looks beautiful, but it doesn't add coverage. It doesn't add color. It doesn't add another layer of heaviness. Sometimes when you go in with a powder over top of your makeup, it can absolutely ruin the whole makeup look because now all of a sudden you look heavy and makeup-y. This is perfection and a must-have. But that is it for my video on luxury makeup you need to know about. These are hidden gems. These are things that I wish more people would talk about because they're just such beautiful products that don't get enough love on social media. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Like this video if you like it. Please let me know your hidden gems and luxury beauty products that you wish other people knew about or you wish other people talked about. I always love to hear from you and keep the conversation going. And I will see you in my next video.